Hi, I'm Trent Maxwell.
And I'm Lee Mason.
And we want to welcome you to our Live, Learn, Survive podcast. Since 2018, Lee and I have travelled the globe and met face-to-face over 26,000 children in 6 countries across 3 continents. We've created a series of award-winning children's books, and Mexi's Rescue Squad are now founders of the Live, Learn, Survive charity, all focused on teaching teens and young adults life skills that not only help themselves, but help others too. We take what we do very seriously, ourselves not so much, as you soon will hear. So let's spend the next half an hour together with some fun, inspiration, and kindness, and we'll try and learn something too. It's not actually half an hour this week, everyone. It's an hour. So
bonus time.
Welcome, Lee.
Yeah, where am I, Maxie? I'm sat next to you for once. So welcome you back to the office.
It's good to be in Brisbane.
It's nice for you to show up at the office for once, put a day in. Yeah, exactly. So, Maxie, today we are incredibly lucky. So, very proud today to welcome a very special person to our podcast, Professor Greg Whyte OBE. But I'm sure he won't mind if from now we call him Greg. It's really difficult to summarise an introduction to Greg because it's really hard to know what to leave out. So I'm going to do my best to give this exceptional man a worthy introduction. Awarded the OBE for services to sport, science and charity, Greg was voted one of the top 10 science communicators in the UK by the British Science Council. Can't even say it, never mind outbe it. An Olympian in modern pentathlon, a European and World Championship medalist, and holder of the Norseman triathlon black T-shirt, which we are going to ask him about today. Currently Professor of Applied Sport and Exercise at John Moores Uni in Liverpool, Director of Performance at the Centre of Health and Human Performance at 76 Harley Street in London, and there's still more. People may know Greg. Is the voice of authority for exercise, physiology and sports exercise performance in the UK. Many people will know him from Sport Relief, and in actual fact, Greg has helped raise over $45 million for charity.
That's amazing.
Comic Relief Challenges. He helped David Williams swim the Channel, the Gibraltar Straits and the length of the Thames. John Bishop's Week of Hell, which I remember living through with him. And he's got over 18 celebrities to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. So
He's done that twice.
Yeah, exactly. So, but equally impressive, Maxie, he was brave enough to swim with you at sunrise in Caversham Lakes. So with all of that, warmest of welcomes, we are absolutely thrilled you were able to join us. Welcome, Professor Greg Whyte.
Welcome, mate.
And it's definitely
we can call you Greg. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Please.
It's so good.
Listen, thanks for having me. It's great to be on. Really great to be. I love what you guys do. I'm a massive fan of what you guys do. So it's fantastic.
Thanks, mate.
Well, that's it done for me. Yeah, I can leave.
Yeah, mate. I was so fortunate. So people that don't know, I've actually met Greg, or myself and Lee have met Greg face to face back in April in 2022. I was going to say 2023.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, we went to Caversham Lakes. Had a good swim. We did an awesome swim there. We're doing some charity stuff. We also did a hypothermia video to showcase, Max's Rescue Squad of what happens if you do get hypothermia.
Absolutely.
And I actually did suffer from mild to moderate case of hypothermia. And, Greg was there to look after me and help me out. But we had a really good chat, and I'll be putting that video back up this week to showcase that great chat we did have. So, again, thank you for coming, mate, and it's really good to see you. You're looking well as always.
So how have you been, Greg, since April?
Do you know, it's really interesting that you talk about hypothermia, because you guys are currently in Brisbane in the sunshine, having a lovely time. Today in the UK, it is currently minus 7 degrees centigrade. Water temperature, open water temperature, somewhere in the region of about 1 to 2 degrees centigrade. It's just above icing over. And in fact, many lakes and ponds in the UK have iced over. It's only the flow of the rivers that are actually stopping them from icing over. So it's quite a timely reminder of the importance of hypothermia and cold.
Yeah.
I also know too, mate, we're so passionate on drowning prevention. In the UK over the summertime, you're all year round, I should say, Greg, but you're very vocal on trying to get the awareness out there to limit the drownings. And here in Australia, unfortunately, there's been 43 drownings in the last couple of weeks, just through summer, on the coast, inland, and we just need to get the message out there. And we're always trying to achieve that common goal of bringing the numbers down. But just quickly, we're dealing with the summer here, but with the winter there, there's been some tragedies over your way as well. Wasn't there, unfortunately, 4 young boys?
Yeah.
Do you want to quickly elaborate on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, tragically, not too far from it. And again, I think, what I love about what you guys do is that, we have a massive problem with learning to swim here in the UK. But really, for me, the bigger problem is actually around water safety education, which I know you guys are so passionate about. And tragically, what we saw just before Christmas was 3 young lads actually were at a pond that had iced over. As kids do, we were all the same. We were kids. They walked out onto the ice. Unfortunately, the ice simply wasn't thick enough. They fell through. And one of their buddies who was on the shore decided to go out and try and save them. And sadly, all lives were lost. And it's a real tragedy, because it's not an issue of being able to swim necessarily. It's just about water safety and knowing that don't go out onto ice and thin ice. And knowing what to do, that if something does happen, go and get help first, and make sure you do the right thing if you're trying to rescue somebody. And it really is all about that. And I think, to me, what's interesting is that this year or last year, 2 million children left school in the UK unable to swim. And it's a statutory requirement of what we call Ofsted, so of the education system, that all year 6 kids, so 11 years old, should be able to swim. But because of lockdowns, because of the energy crisis and closing swimming pools in the UK, lots of kids haven't learned to swim. But for me, the critical factor of that is that the best time to educate kids around water safety is when they're learning to swim. And of course, you remove that process, you remove the ability to educate around water safety. And sadly, tragedies like this happen on too regular a basis in the UK.
And it's been, like, we're in summer now, but it's been the same here. Like, literally every day there's been, I think in Queensland last week, there was a headline about a drowning 5 out of 7 days in the paper. Like,
it's tragic. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think, we talk about hypothermia and cold water exposure, and I think actually what we think is that it is just on, like we've got at the moment, winter days when air temperature is very cold. But actually, unless you're acclimatized to cold water, when you get in the sea, even in Brisbane, when you get in the sea, if you are unaccustomed to that and unacclimatized to that, that water is cold enough to induce a cold shock 100%. Response. You get this hyperventilation with the waves coming over the top. If you're not a very strong swimmer, if you don't know what the rip and the current is doing, that cold can be as problematic in the heat of the summer as it can be in the winter. And in fact, probably in the winter, we're probably more mindful of it, because it is really cold, So yeah, and it's over 50% of drownings in the UK occur in what is our summer period, between that sort of June and August period. And it's because kids, it's a hot day, and you look at the water and it looks inviting, doesn't it? So
why we
in you go.
Took the opportunity to come last April, because we knew that it was like going to be a much needed, after lockdown, people not having swimming lessons. We just thought, look, you know what, the timing's right. Let's just go and just do anything that we can. Like, it only, if it saves one life, then it's been, kind of worth it. So, but like, interestingly, some of the drownings here, you just said, Greg, about send for help first. Quite a few of the drownings that have been here in the last 2 or 3 weeks have been parents going in after a child. The child's got out, the parent's been lost.
Yeah, so we're trying to really get the awareness out there that rescuers do drown too. And if you don't have situational awareness, you don't know what to do, you can't swim yourself, you always need to go in the water with a flotation device. So we're just trying to get that message across. And
the wonderful thing, since we saw you in April, Greg, is that now we have our own charity. So we are going to be able to fundraise ourselves to do more.
And there's more that we're going to talk about later on to see.
Because then we can be like in direct control. We don't have very expensive boards or things like that, and all that like sort of makes things tricky. We can be really efficient with every dollar we get. So that's really exciting for us. So but this is
Absolutely
about
brilliant.
you, so we probably better start by you're in the hot seat now, Greg. We're like,
You're scaring me.
You thought Norseman was tough. You just wait for this. Max has got his question.
Yeah, so I'm saying with 10 minutes in, we haven't even asked a question yet. It's going to be a long night. All right. So question one, mate. We've got about close to 20 questions here, but we'll start off with number one. So how did this all begin? What was your first step?
Wow. That's an interesting one. I mean, I've been swimming since I was, and competitively swimming since I was 6 years of age. Those days are sort of gone now, I think, where you can actually be competitive that young, but certainly I'm an old man, so back then you could do it. But fundamentally, much like it is for many kids, it's actually about parents, and my mum and dad were absolutely incredible. And what I always reflect on what they did is what I try and do now. I've got 3 kids now, and that is that they were incredibly supportive. They were never pushy, but very supportive. And of course, as a swimmer, I started life as a swimmer. You've got to be really supportive and dedicated to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go early morning swim training. So I've been around swimming my entire life. I think the interesting thing for me was that as you guys know, but I'm an ambassador for the Royal Lifesaving Society here in the UK. And much of that is because my dad was a lifeguard and an examiner for the RLSS. I became a lifeguard. My brother was a lifeguard. My wife was a lifeguard. And now, funnily enough, my eldest daughter, who's 17, she is now a lifeguard. So
That's
it's to some extent, I think if you cut us in half, it probably says RLSS all the way through.
Amazing. And same, my mum was an RLSS examiner. So exactly the same. Very similar. Like, I think I grew up on the side of a pool. I think I could probably swim before I could walk, because swimming was life, It was, it was such a big thing.
It was amazing to see too, and you cut yourself short here, from 6 years old starting competitive swimming, but you went to the Olympics twice. Do you want to know that? It's pretty amazing.
It's been a great career. It's been a great career, and it's I swam up until classically up until the age sort of as swimming being my sort of main focus up to the age of about sort of 14, 15. And then, as always happens, it's part of my social circle. You guys know this, when you're part of a life surfing club or a swimming club or any club, to some extent, it's actually a part of your social circle. So I went because my mates were there. You started to see around sort of 14, 15, classically, you see the attrition of your mates. And in that interim, I was lucky enough to find a sport called modern pentathlon. And then I was lucky enough to be good at it. I worked incredibly hard to be good at it, but and lucky enough to become an Olympian. I was a world and European medalist, so it was a great career. But what's interesting here is that some of the highlights we're talking at the moment, in January, and every year, as a modern pentathlete, every year I would come out to Oz. And we would have a training camp in Sydney, up on the North Shores, in Narrabeen. And we'd come out for a month, and then from there we'd go down to Melbourne, then Melbourne on to Canberra and compete in the World Cup in Canberra. And my favourite win ever was actually in Canberra in 1989, a long time ago.
That's awesome.
But it was a great career, and it afforded me the opportunity to travel the world and meet great people. I was very, very fortunate.
Amazing. So that leads into the question I've got for you next then, Greg. All of that as a career, how do you go about making important decisions? Do you have a process that you go through?
It's an interesting one. I think that one of the most important things, and I see this in you guys, and we all experience this when we meet people. For me, it's about passion. Is that when you are making a decision, I think critically what you've got to be is you've got to be all in, on making that decision. You've got to be passionate about it. And I think the one thing, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but working with others is that I think that there's an awful lot you can do for others, but what you can never do is create that passion, that desire. And so I think, if you are making a big decision, I think the crucial thing is to make sure that lots of things about making sure it's right for you, making sure it's structured in the right way, etc. But I think fundamentally what underpins all that is about passion and the desire to really achieve what the end goal is.
I agree. That's a great answer.
Great answer.
Love it.
Mate, so there's two here. So I'll start off with the first one. Greatest strength that you have. Greatest strength.
It'd probably be a different answer if you asked my wife.
I'm married too, mate.
Yeah, we've all got that. So, yeah, exactly.
Greatest strength. I guess you could probably see it as a weakness, I guess, but I think my greatest strength is I hate to be beaten.
So you're very competitive.
Absolutely hate it. And I think because of that, what that drives is a tenacity to achieve in whatever that is. And it's not necessarily about winning in terms of sort of racing winning. I think it's I hate to lose if I set myself a goal.
Yeah, so it's you're altering, like it's yourself having you're off. Yeah, I understand that. So it's a competition with self. I think that's really important actually because invariably, I mean, even in sport, one thing I learned through sport is the fact that you can only control. There's this sort of lovely saying that people talk about: control the controllables. And I think within that, there's only one thing you can do, and that is control yourself. You can only control what you are doing. And I think, what sport teaches you is that what you can't do is you can't control what the competition is doing. And I think it's a real failure if you try and adapt what you're doing based upon what others are doing. And I say this to my kids constantly, when they come back from having done sport, whichever sport it is that they're doing that particular day, disappointed or happy, the one question I always ask them is, look, did you give it 100%? Because I think all we can do in life, and whatever it is give 100%. And I think if you have given it 100%, experience tells me that what you'll never do is look back with a regret. You never regret it because it's everything you had. You may not have achieved what you wanted to do. For me personally, I never won an Olympic medal. I won a world and European, but never an Olympic medal. But I don't look back and think, I should have worked harder because I couldn't. I gave it 100%. It was everything I had. It just wasn't enough. So, and that to me, I think is absolutely crucial. Give it everything you've got. Give it 100%, and you'll never regret it.
Amazing.
And I'll just say the second part of that is your biggest weakness, and you kind of touch a little bit of base. But would you say, just the weakness of failing to, you don't want to lose,
of not giving up,
not giving up?
Well, I mean, maybe it is. I think I think what's interesting on that is sort of ages. Classically with this, I think going back to what we were talking about earlier on about that sort of desire piece. Actually, it's very difficult to accumulate experience without actually doing it. And I think certainly one of the mottos that I have is that I'm sure we've all met people who say, "Oh yeah, I've never failed." And to my mind, if you've never failed, then you have never tried.
Yes. Oh my God.
Because
who can say that?
Success is never guaranteed. And so I think to that extent, you could deem it as a weakness. But I think actually, look, if you failed, what it does mean is you're pushing yourself and you're pushing that envelope. You're moving outside your comfort zone. All those sort of little sayings that we talk about. But I think so. Is it a weakness? I'm not 100% sure it is, but it's the way that I live my life. I'm not saying everybody else should do that.
Would you say then, based on all of that, would you say, Greg, that you've had more setbacks than successes, or when you look back of it, do you think you've had more successes than setbacks?
I'll tell you what I would say is that I only remember
exactly. Well, that's right. That's the whole point of it. That's the whole point of it, isn't it? It's like because most people do say
it is.
You fail way more times than you ever, but the truth is that you just let those go and you just keep going. You just go for the next thing.
You keep going, don't stop.
Yeah. And I think you've got to as well. I think the one thing you learn with life as you get older is the fact that look, I can't go back in time and change it. And so therefore, what has gone has gone. I think what we can do, and I think what is crucial, and Einstein coined it beautifully, and that is that effectively, to paraphrase it, stupidity is repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a different
Yes.
result.
Yeah.
Now that's it. So I think, what we do is that, and we should, and I think that's what I do, is that you learn from those areas when you haven't been successful, but at the same time, what you do is just park them. So you take the learnings forward, but what you do is you don't take the failure forward.
And back to what you were just saying before about the past, like I have this thing in my head, is the past is the past. You can't change it. It is what it is. It's happened, for good, the bad, the ugly, right? The future doesn't exist yet. All right. So you could set yourself up for a brighter and bigger future by training and doing certain things, but it's not guaranteed. The only thing that is guaranteed is the present moment. I always say this with Lee is, this given step that we're taking, whether it's left or right, you're in control. And, as long as you're on the good path, positive path, and you're happy, that's all that matters.
Yeah. And you've made the decisions for the right reasons, and you've thought about it all. You can't do anything else, can you?
But it's okay to make, like I said, mistakes and stuff like that. But like you said, you got to learn from those mistakes. You got to learn from those things. And what Einstein said: if you keep doing it, expect a different result.
Then you're crazy. Yeah, exactly. Okay, go next, Maxi.
Yes. So, how do you deal with times when things go wrong?
I think self-reflection is something that generally we're not very good at. And I think that the easiest thing, and certainly when we're young, what we do is we like to look around to see who we can blame. And it's something, and again, you should never beat yourself up for that, because it's just a natural thing to do, really. Is you look around and think, oh, it's your fault. And actually, for me, one of the best things I've learned through my career is just take a really close look at yourself in the mirror. What is it that you could have done differently? And it might not be obvious. Sometimes there are clear things that, you just didn't, if you're entering a race or something, you just didn't train hard enough, you didn't commit enough, then that's quite obvious. But actually, there are often subtle things, the way in which you deal with people, the way in which you treat people, the way in which you communicate various different things to people. All of those sort of things. It's not just the hard skills, it's also the soft skills within that. But for me, I think the most important thing, that if you don't get to where you're trying to get to, I think the first place to start is self-reflection. Take a look at yourself, have a long, hard, honest discussion with yourself, and then look to see what, in having done that, then look at these areas about, what worked, what didn't work. And I think, again, what's interesting for me is that often what we do is that we spend perhaps just a little bit too much time looking at the things that didn't work, the bad things about it, when actually what we should do is also focus on things that did work. If we're going to go again and we're going to try again, then what we want to make sure is the things that we did really well, we want to keep those and potentially enhance those, whilst at the same time that those weaknesses that we've got is actually work on those weaknesses to improve those. What we're trying to do is just bring everything up to an excellent level, rather than let things drop and let things slide.
That's awesome.
You're full of wisdom today.
You're
giving us goosebumps, mate.
So many.
It's a Monday morning, so.
From watching you all week to talking to you face to face like this, mate.
We're just like, awesome. This is amazing. So, best career decision, Greg. What a career. One of them you would say was a really good one.
Best career decision. Wow. Do you know what? I was the director of research for the British Olympic Medical Centre, and I remember I was at a university post at the time, and it was a real punt to go in to take that job. In a sense, I was the inaugural director of research. They'd never had a director of research before. They really didn't have a research culture at all at that time. So it was one of those jobs that I could move outside of the comfort zone. A nice academic position. Very clear what I was doing. Actually, I love and still love teaching. Into what was relatively unknown, albeit in my area. So I took that post, and I had 4 incredible years at the British Olympic Medical Centre. I looked after the prep, particularly the environmental prep was one of my specialty areas, of 5 Olympic Games, including summer and winter. And it was a magnificent experience, and it taught me an awful lot, and actually opened up a huge number of doors. So I think I guess the message in that is, don't be afraid to make a change. I think often the best decisions you
and
make
you obviously went into a role that, like you
change.
say, it was brand new. There was no roadmap. There was probably no position description. There was no one there to give you onboarding. You probably walked in, there was a desk, and like, here we go, and that's like amazing, because you can really then put your stamp on it. And there's so many times we say this with what we're trying to do, and now, like, having a charity, we know we operate a little bit differently. We're trying to maybe do things in a way where maybe traditional education's maybe failed, so it's like there is no roadmap. We are winging it by every single day, and I can't believe some days that we've done what we've done for just two random individuals.
Two knuckleheads.
Two knuckleheads. I mean, Batman and Robin, look at us. Like, seriously, we rock up anywhere and just know everybody will have a great day, and that's all we can promise.
I'm not even a lifeguard, mate.
But what you have, though, is what we spoke about right at the very beginning, and that is that's what I love about you guys is passion. And that passion is infectious, and I think that invariably, that to me, that'll give you 50% of the success you're looking for.
We always say people might beat us on ability, but they will never beat us on enthusiasm.
Yeah, perfect. And that's the way it should be, I think.
Exactly.
Greg, there's been plenty of achievements, mate. And like I said, this week I've seen many online. But what has been your greatest achievement to date? I know it's a big question to ask, but is there something that really stands out achievement-wise?
God, it's funny enough, a friend of mine asked me this the other day. I was having a coffee with a mate of mine. He said to me, what is it that yanks your chain? What is it that really gets you out of bed in the morning? And I think the paradox is, and it comes back to what you guys do. The paradox is, I would say it's all the work I do for charity, because I do all that work completely for free. Invariably it costs me money. I absolutely take no fee and nothing from that. But it's the one area that gives me the greatest joy. And certainly, obviously with comic relief and sport relief, now with a big charity here in the UK called Children in Need, I've supported over 36 major challenges. And in fact, that figure you gave now is probably up to over 65 million pounds for charity, whatever that is in Aussie.
No, it's 1.2 billion probably.
Like it's a lot of million.
100 million.
Sorry,
100 million. Sorry, billion. 100 million.
That's why we have an account. Yeah. We do have an account.
I'll take the 1.2 billion.
Got an account, honestly.
Good.
That's not us.
Keep him.
No,
but that I love. I love that because I've had the opportunity to, as much as you guys do as well. I think there is no greater joy than seeing where you've made a difference. And I've had the opportunity to travel to various projects in the UK and around the world to see where the money that was raised has been spent and the difference that it makes to people's lives. And I think there's nothing, to my mind, there's nothing better than that. So for me, the best thing I've ever done is that. I think,
that reminds me of the first trip that Maxie and I came to the UK, and it was just a complete random that we ended up coming. I was coming back for a birthday. Maxie happened to be in Europe. Someone invited to open a surf club. No budget, nothing, just like a bit of a joke, cheeky. And us two said yes.
He will come over.
So there we were in Southbourne in Bournemouth. Brilliant. And this was and we still keep in touch with his family and these two little lads from Portsmouth, travelled for the day. Zach and Max, they sat on the beach on a freezing cold day, wrapped in a blanket, and their mum and dad just could not believe, we had them joining in, we had them playing games, they were running up and down the sand, and we were like, whoa, that was cool. This is the start of something. Yeah, we didn't even have Live, Learn, Survive. We didn't have a name. We didn't have a name, but that day was it was almost like actually, and I remember saying to Maxie, you know what, you have a platform, and you almost have a responsibility. And I'll help you. Here we are. Yeah.
And there you are now. It is amazing what you can achieve, though, isn't it?
Exactly.
Because if you'd have looked back 10 years ago at what you achieved now,
even the last 6 months,
even
the last 3 months, it's crazy.
Even having a charity, we can't believe that we've got that, and we've got that because basically an amazing team of lawyers in Brisbane said just what you said. Oh, we love you too. We'll help you. And it was like,
perfect. Hey, listen, that's how
and we
life
just
works.
turn up with cupcakes. That's it. So.
Well, listen, I'll do anything
exactly.
for a cupcake.
And so will our lawyers. So any secrets, Greg, that you can share that might inspire someone else? That anything that's helped get you where you've got today? A little bit of a secret Greg formula.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting, and you've actually just coined it, I think, and that is, your team of lawyers. I think it is about, life is about teamwork. I have this little saying, and that is, look, nothing great is ever achieved alone. And even sometimes we look at people, we think, oh, they've done it themselves, and it's never true, ever. When you look behind them, what you see is this team of people, and it includes family, it includes friends, it can include professions, and for me, I think if you are looking to achieve something, I think the first place to start is to identify the team that is going to support you. Now, crucially, it's not just about having a team. You've got to make sure that team integrates well, that it works well together, and I think more as important of all of that is make sure that team works for you, and it's not always about the most expensive or the most experienced or the highest profile. It's actually about people that work for you and share your dream.
They share the vision
where you're trying to get to.
They share the vision and the passion about it.
Yeah,
100%. No,
yeah. So teamwork, I think teamwork makes the dream work, and for me, make sure you got the right team 100%. Around you.
Yeah. And we've really been tread carefully with that, because it's like, when you've got the right team, it's magic. It really is. And it only takes one bad one in the team that makes it very not magic. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. And that's a good point, because it is about managing that team, and I think, as a leader, you're the leader of the Live, Learn, Survive team. And so you have to sometimes make those difficult decisions to offload some members who just aren't working the right way, and then reappoint. And that's it's not. Often people think, oh, you've been lucky. You haven't been lucky. No way. You've worked incredibly hard, and you've taken the right approach, and that's why leadership within that team is absolutely fundamental. And what you guys are for Live, Learn, Survive is exactly that. Is great leaders.
We love what we do. We're so passionate. A lot of sacrifice, a lot of traveling, a lot of big days for Lee in the office. It doesn't come easy. But adding on to being leaders, and as we get bigger with the charity and more people get involved, setting good values within the charity, and kind of reflect that onto the people that are joined to kind of follow suit and try and create a positive and great environment for everyone. Mates, back to
and lead by example.
100%. Exactly.
Walk the walk. Mate, do you believe it is a good thing to set goals?
It is absolutely fundamental, and the first starting point to achieving anything in life is a goal. Now, I think often where we get sort of confused within that is, I think that invariably people set goals, they don't achieve that goal, and so therefore it's because they're setting goals, so they sort of give up on the goal setting thing. I think the important thing is to remember that goals themselves, you've got a big long-term goal. You cut that goal down into medium-term goals and then into short-term goals, all of which should be planned and structured in a way that's going to deliver to this long-term goal. And then also each of those goals really needs to be constructed well. I think invariably when you look at failure of delivery of goal, invariably it's because the goal is the wrong goal. So there are lots of different models for this. But different ways to think about how you structure those goals. But there are lots of sort of rules, which I think if you do follow, you can make sure. So, are they timely? Invariably, what people do. So, we're in the new year. New Year's resolutions are a classic for that, is that people set goals. I want to lose 3 stone. I want to lose 5 kilos by the end of January. And you're thinking, well, unless you sever a limb, that's not going to happen, is it? Because it's not timed. Is it achievable? Is it measurable? There are all these sort of factors that are associated with it. But I can tell you, without goals, you rarely achieve anything.
I agree. So basing on those goals, my question is, with the extreme, elite level that you've worked at, how do you go from good to great? What's that extra that takes you from good to great?
Well, that to me, that's the mark of excellence. I think it's an interesting one. I often talk about this with things like coaching. There are 2 things about great coaches. Firstly, is that they're able to replicate success. Having a single success with a single individual or a single team is one thing, but being able to replicate that over and over again, that's quality coaching. But I think probably the most important thing about quality coaching is it's the ability to make good athletes excellent, not to take excellent individuals and keep them excellent. I don't necessarily think that's a mark of great coaching. And so I think it's really important that what we do is that we, and so from a personal perspective, I think this is why what we need to do is think about pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone, because it's there where the magic happens. It doesn't sitting on the sofa is easy. That's the bottom line. It's only when you push yourself, you fully understand what you are capable of achieving. So I think that movement, fundamentally, that movement from good to excellent won't happen while you're sat on the sofa drinking a cup of tea.
Yeah, it's the extra.
100%. Mate, mindset is so important. How do you keep mentally tough?
Wow.
Oh, we're putting you under it today, Greg. I know
you are. I tell you what, these are tough questions.
You're doing so well.
We knew that you would be the man with the answers.
I'll take on the Norseman again. What was the question again?
Mindset is so important. How do you keep mentally tough? So how do you keep pushing through mentally?
Well, I think much of it. I think what's interesting is that what we like to do, and it may be an excuse that we sort of have, is that we look at people who are successful or achieve incredible things, and what we do is, they must have been born with that, and we assume it's innate, that actually people are born tough, and so therefore they're able to cope with it. Where I think there is an element of that, but I think in the vast majority of it is it's what we call nurture. It's the learning, the development of that mental toughness. And I think often, much like it is when we talk about goal setting, is that mental toughness is developed and it's built progressively. What you don't do is you're not sat on your sofa drinking your cup of tea, and the following day all of a sudden you take on the English Channel, the Norseman, or the Race Across America, or whatever it is that actually what we understand is that physically we have to progress and we have to overload and all these sort of classic things that we do with training. But to my mind, it's exactly the same thing with the brain, is that what we've got to do is we've got to develop the brain, we've got to teach the brain, we've got to give it the opportunity to believe that it can achieve. And I think, you do that by challenging it constantly. So you go a little bit longer, you go a little bit harder, and in doing that, it just grows exponentially across time until you get to the point when you've got mental toughness. And mental toughness is fundamentally built on experience.
Well, the funny you say that, I run a lot, and I do all sorts of different exercises, but the amount of times I've been on the treadmill or doing that last kilometre or last mile, and on my watch or my phone it says, you're finished, but I go that little bit extra just to go, you know what, I'm feeling all right here. Could be at level 16 on the treadmill. And there's something in your brain saying, come on, keep pushing, you can do it. And it really, for me, it slows my breathing down, makes me feel even more stronger. And it's kind of like a power thing.
Yeah.
And I love that. But like I said, I've had to start somewhere. And that was a couple of years ago doing the old block run to running X amount of kilometers now. And I love mental toughness. It's definitely a thing.
You are very tough and focused when
there's more to go. There's more to come.
Yeah, there's lots more. Yeah, Maxie Maxie just goes for a run and he comes back 20 Ks later. That's like, it's just okay, 20. He goes, yeah, I'll get a text. He'll go, oh, I did 20. I was feeling all right.
I was feeling all right.
I'm like, okay, fine.
Good.
So speaking about that mental toughness, I loved this in your Norseman film, the Happy Bank. Tell us about the Happy Bank. I loved this, Greg. I think this is such gold for younger people to have this as a thought process.
Well, look, being successful in life requires time, it requires effort, it requires tenacity and dedication. And what you are constantly doing is dealing with ups and downs. Often the best analogy I can give you is that when we watch elite sport, what we're doing is we're watching the end product of that process. And so, you can watch the Olympic Games and you watch them stand on the rostrum and they get their gold medal and the flag goes up and you think, oh, yeah, I'd love to do that. And what you're not seeing is the 5 o'clock in the morning when it's tipping down with rain and you really don't want to do it and you're sore all over, but you've got to go up and go to another session. And it perturbates. There is success, but also there is failure. There are dark times, and those dark times can be really difficult to deal with. But in my opinion, that's where the greatest growth occurs. It's by challenging yourself and actually really pushing it. That's really what matters. And so I think through whatever it is that you're taking on, you can adapt this into business or any other walk of life, really, is that it's how well you cope with those dark times. And where the Happy Bank comes in, to my mind, is that nothing good comes easy. If you think about your brain as what we like to call the central governor, it's the controller, and its job fundamentally is to keep you safe. That's really what the brain is doing. And so with that Happy Bank, what the brain is telling you when the going gets tough, when you're on the treadmill and you've still got a kilo to go, the brain is saying, you can stop now, you can get off, now's the time to ease back. And at that point, it's really, really tough. Now, by pushing through that and actually driving and putting more effort in and just finishing that session off, what you do is you implant into the brain this belief that you can do it. Just squeeze it out a little bit more. I have this other saying that I use a lot on comic relief and that's squeeze it out. And the great analogy here is that, in the mornings when you get up and you look at the toothpaste and it's in the tube and you think, oh, it's empty. And yet if you give it a rub,
there's always a bit more.
Squeeze it just a little bit harder. There's always something in there. And that to me is what we are. The humans are like that. It's just squeeze it out. There's always something more to give. But the crucial thing about that is that what you're trying to do is fill this Happy Bank. You're trying to invest in the brain, the belief that you can achieve this. And so that when you come to a big challenge and you get midway or 3/4 way or even towards the end of a big challenge and you're starting to think to yourself, I cannot do this, I can't keep going. All of that investment that you've made into this Happy Bank, you can then start extracting. You can start withdrawing that investment, and that investment is saying you can do this. You have done it before. You've done the work. And the more of that you've put in, the more you've invested, the more reserves you've got to withdraw. In other words, the more training, the more preparation, the more planning that you have done, the greater your chance of delivering.
It's amazing, Greg. I've had the same tube of toothpaste for 2 years now. No.
Seriously, Greg, never travel with him. And if you do travel with him, just always take toothpaste because it's like,
bring your own toothpaste.
Bring your own toothpaste and bring a spare tube for him because it's like that's just the way it works.
But there's also another quick analogy. I know we're smashing through these questions, mate, but there's one that I always think too. Picture you're 80 or 90 years old on a rocking chair at the front of your house on your veranda, and your grandkids come up to you and ask you, so tell us about your life or tell us a story. And if you just sit there rocking up and back, going, yeah, you know what, life was pretty good. There was no real dramas. Everything was swell. A couple of little hiccups, but yeah, it's all good. Your story's over within a couple of minutes. But where people want to hear, the kids want to hear the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the ugly, the the triumphs, the good times, the bad times. And I always think of that. It's like whenever you're going through a bit of a rough spot, it's just like a movie, it's like there's a crowd going, come on, you can do it. How's he gonna react from this? So it's a bit different to the toothpaste, but I always do think of that as well. So
It's
the Rocky moment.
But but I think you're right. I think the bottom line is, interesting people are people who do things. They're not necessarily the people who are always successful. They're the people who have challenged themselves, and in that challenge, they make themselves interesting. Yeah,
just have a go. So speaking of Maxi, next question.
Yeah, so we're up to question 14 here, mate. So Norseman film. At the end, you say, so what's next?
Yeah.
I understand that was back in 2018, 2019, and it's been a couple of years for COVID and stuff like that. But what is next, mate?
God. Well, actually, after that, so we went into COVID. It was 2019, so we went into COVID 2020, as you guys know as well as us. And I was planning another extreme try that year in Patagonia, so it was called the Patagon Man. That got cancelled, and so not wanting to lose, going back to that, we'd done all the prep and everything, and the team was together. So we went up and did a challenge in northwest Scotland, a place called Torridon, which is where they hold what's called the Celt Man. It's another extreme triathlon. But we went up there, and I went up there and went solo with the team. We've made a documentary, and actually this week we're about to release that film this week, which is.
Well, we're going to be sharing it, so people listening to this podcast will be able to see it on our socials and yours as well. So, I look forward to seeing that, mate. That'll be awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we also...
Well, I'll tell you what, particularly the swim. Yes. The swim on that was something... and then this year, the swim on the Torridon, it's worth watching the film just for that. Rarely, if ever, am I scared of open water. But what's the film?
And
see.
Without trying to give too much away, it's not the cold water, I'm guessing?
Well,
I know it's cold,
but
is it like just other little things?
The cold doesn't scare me. It's darkness. And the interesting thing is that the loch, so they call them lochs in Scotland, this huge lake, but this huge lake opened up into the Atlantic. And so in this loch, they actually got whales. And I remember chatting with the one of the specialists, the wildlife specialists down there before we did the swim. And I said to him, have you ever seen orca in the loch? And he said, well, it's interesting you should say that. He said, because we do get orca at the mouth of the loch.
Wow.
Now for me, right, sharks, I get it, right? But orca, they don't differentiate. If they take a bite, it's definitely over. And so I said to him, I said that's great that you've not seen them in there. I said, but have you looked at 5 o'clock in the morning in the pitch black? He said, no. He said, no. He said, but he said, but on the positive, if you do spot any, you'll be the first one to do so. Yeah, I said to him, I'm not sure you're completely understanding what the worry is here.
Oh my life! And then you did the Thames swim. We know you did the Thames swim, the Upper Thames. We were invested in that, Greg. I tell you what, the times I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, worried where you were and how your shoulder was going. I was like, oh man, that looked tough.
Yeah. It was crazy. So what I decided to do, and again, exactly what you guys are doing is actually about raising the sort of profile, as it were, of drowning prevention. That's the critical thing, really, and water safety and all of that. And I just figured that would be the best way to do it. So I swam what's called the Upper Thames. You're not allowed to swim the tidal Thames anymore. So the Upper Thames, 135 miles. And my plan was to do it in 4 days. So anybody doing the calculations, that is 50,000 meters a day. And so day one set the scene at 53,000 meters on day one. It was an interesting time, but it was a really, really tough challenge. Just I think from a speed perspective, as much as anything else, really, what I was trying to achieve in terms of speed. But so important, and tragically, it was sort of a 3-week period of the challenge. And in the UK, we had a heat wave. It's one of our hottest times of the year, and it's obviously in that zone. I swam it in July, and that is the period of highest number of drownings. And actually, during that period, 50 young people lost their lives to drowning in the UK alone. So it was such an important. For me, it was such an important message that we were trying to raise, and as much as anything else, the challenge was great. But actually, the traction we got with the message and raising the profile of water safety was enormous. It was a wonderful thing to be part of, albeit incredibly.
When we finished, we had it was like surreal, really. When we actually the last day of our trip. In April, we ended up at Clacton, and we were with the amazing beach lifeguards down at Clacton. And the reason we sort of knew Clacton was on our radar, because even like say 2 or 3 years before that, we were contacted by a mum who her son had actually drowned under the pier at Clacton. And we sent books to his school in Ben's memory, and mum just sort of checked in with us once in a while. Anyway, we ended up going to Clacton and spent the afternoon with the lifeguards, and Ben's mum actually came down, and we were like right by the pier at the lifeguard station, and she spent a couple of hours with G, and she was just absolutely, and she said that was the first time she'd actually been back to the beach. And I said, well, if we've done nothing other than today, bring you back to maybe, bit of closure and walk along the ocean and it not be quite, so awareness is so important.
And I was my specialty, sort of academically, my specialty is sudden cardiac death in young kids. And I established the first Centre for Sports Cardiology dedicated to that factor. And we've all sort of seen it and experienced it in the press, where young people die suddenly during sport, etc. But I tell you what, if you ever wonder what impact you're having, meeting parents of those that have lost children. I mean, I honestly don't know how they get out of bed in the morning. I mean, I just can't imagine it. And I think if anybody listening to this is wondering why they should donate to Live, Learn, Survive, then let me tell you, just meet somebody who's lost a child, and you'll see how important the work that you guys do in making sure that or reducing the risk that any other parent will have to go through that. It is truly heartbreaking. But at the same time, and we do the same thing at the same time, by taking action, by doing something, what we can do is hold our heads up and in the sure and certain knowledge of what we are doing is we're reducing that risk of it.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Absolutely. So well said. So changing a little bit, favorite comic relief challenge. It would be hard to pick, and I, as an English born girl, but ended up the other side of the planet, been very invested in some of these people and these challenges over the years. What are the nice things? Did you have a favorite, or is there one that stands out to you for a reason that we probably might not know?
Well, it's a really interesting one. I mean, I've done, as I said before, sort of 36 of them, with some truly outstanding people. They're giving up their time. And again, all you ever see is the end product. So you see the challenge itself. What you don't see is the months of training that went in before it. From a favourite perspective, I think it's always the solo challenges, because they are properly brutal, and there is a real there's a real desire from the celeb to actually complete it. And some of those have been absolutely epic. Things like Davina McCall, when we did the the crazy triathlon from Edinburgh down to London, and we swam across Lake Windermere. Oh my goodness! It's the first time that the British press actually put a headline and said, "When will he kill himself?" which I quite liked. John Bishop and Joe Brand. But I think probably it goes back to the first challenge. And interestingly, in Australia, you will know this guy, and that is David Walliams. And the first challenge I ever did, and that Sport Relief ever did, was David Walliams swam the English Channel back in 2006 now, a long time ago. And I think what was really special about that was that it was the first one, obviously. But I think crucially that there was a word that was constantly, and I mean constantly, bandied about around that challenge over two things. One was that could David Walliams swim across the English Channel? The classic word was impossible. That this cross-dressing comedian on Little Britain at the time, he can never swim across it. Number one. And then number two was, because again, nobody had ever done it before, was you can't raise money for charity by doing a challenge like this. This was at a time when nobody really did it. And of course, he became the first man in UK, to raise £1 million on a single challenge. And of course, he got across the English Channel in one of the fastest times across the Channel that year. So I think, for me, it's probably my favourite for all sorts of reasons, and the fact that David's still a very close friend of mine now, and a true legend in every sense of the word.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. No, we watched part of that one today. So yeah, incredible.
Mate, back to more of a serious question. Drowning statistics. Why do you think education is so important?
Well, in the UK, one person drowns every 20 hours. I mean, just think about that figure. We are, much like Australia, we're an island nation. We've got 5,000 miles of coastline. We've got 4,000 miles of inland waterways. And yet so many people drown. I mean, it is an absolute tragedy. And the real tragedy in that is that the vast majority of those are young people. And it sits within that group of 8 to 18-year-olds, and the vast majority.
Yeah, same here, Greg. Same here.
There's a lot of testosterone, a lot of
peer pressure, maybe.
And I think lots of reasons for it. I think, but at the same time, not all drownings are preventable, but many are. And I think that's why water safety, learning to swim, number one, should be a life skill. And sadly, in the UK, we simply don't take it seriously enough, or certainly governments don't take it seriously enough. And I think, secondly, it is about water safety. It's about understanding. To some extent, it's about respect.
You need the respect.
Is that looking at a body of water and thinking it could be dangerous, and what are those dangers? For you guys on the beach, for us as well with beaches, that you talk about Clacton, interestingly enough, is that it's a notorious black spot around the pier because of the rip. Now, when you look at it on a clear sunny day in flat weather with no wind, you can't see the rip. You can't see any of those hidden dangers. And so therefore, what's absolutely crucial about that is that we educate people, particularly locals. Interestingly enough, many people who die on the shores of the UK are actually visitors to the shores. It's the same the world over. And again, that's why education is so important. But it's also about education of rivers and about flow of rivers, about temperature of water, about underwater hazards. When I swam the Thames, a great example of this is I swam the Thames, and there is a notorious bridge not far from me, actually. I live close to the Thames. And this bridge, kids jump off in the summer. And I was swimming, and we were coming past this bridge, a place called Sonning, where a former Prime Minister lives, interestingly enough, who I was talking to about this after we'd done the swim. But I was coming up to the bridge, and the crew stopped me and said, "Look, we've got to stop here, Greg, because there are kids jumping off the bridge, quite a narrow bridge." And they said, "We don't want them to jump on top of it. So we're going to go around and stop them jumping off." This bridge is 3 meters high. when I swam underneath it, I was actually touching the bottom.
Oh my goodness.
So the water depth was less than half a meter. And they were jumping from 3 meters into the water, and that to me is, much of that is about education. It's also about us, the state taking responsibility and actually making it incredibly difficult to jump off that bridge by putting barriers up, by putting signs up, and what we have in life is that there's an awful lot of reactivity to it. Is that when a tragedy occurs, then all of a sudden we all sort of scurry around.
And you know what? That's when same as happening now. That's when the news get involved. When it's reactive to the statistics.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's funny that I'm not saying like everyone's trying to achieve a common goal by getting the awareness out there, but unfortunately, sometimes the people that the media focus on or interview or talk to are experts, but experts for I don't know. Like I feel like me and Lee, we're like one of the only around Australia doing bits and pieces, going in and out of schools and stuff. And it's not a competition about who does what, but I think the common goal is to get as much awareness out there as we can, and try and get as much media and government support as we can as well. Now that we are a charity, it's our right. We need to get it out there. We need to be able to get as many people involved, not just here in Australia, but around the world. And touching base on how important just water safety is in general. It doesn't matter if it's on the coast, inland, waterways. It's very important for people to understand the hidden dangers, the hidden risks, things that people don't think about. And like you said, the depth. Could be submerged objects, could be sediment on the bottom. People get stuck. There's all sorts of different things that could happen. But I think a lot of people don't think that it will happen to them. That's the problem.
And more people drown in land
and on top of that,
in Australia than they actually do at the coast.
Yeah.
Considering we all mainly live around the coast, there are actually more inland drownings than at the coast.
Well, and much of that is probably driven by the fact when you look at the sea and the break is big, you're not going to get in if you can't swim, or you don't. You'll certainly think twice about it. Whereas actually, you definitely get in. You're getting in anyway, whatever happens. Yeah, but it is interesting, and I think some of those areas where we don't often look at, and that is ponds in the back garden, and inflatable pools for the kids, or having a swimming pool, or even tragically leaving kids in baths.
Happens a lot.
It doesn't have to be a big body of water with a tide or a rip or cold for drowning to occur. And I think again that message, there's a continuum along which, and it's why specialists advising and reiterating.
And on inland properties here, your pool is fenced to everything, and then 100 meters to the left is a huge dam. It's like, and water is just like a magnet for kids.
They love it.
They absolutely are drawn to it. So, Well, our first in our part to tackle all of this, Greg, May is going to be Live, Learn, Survive's first charity challenge, because I don't know if you've read that. So it was done in 2014. But the World Health Organization did a report dedicated solely to drowning, purely to drowning. And point 3, other than, supervision of children and removing water, which is pretty impossible. The third point of action was educate young children, school-age children. That was the solution. And so basically the statistic of 42 people drown every hour of every day somewhere in the world. Our May challenge is going to be, what's your 42? So my good friend here, that's why the 42 kilometers, sort of the marathon kind of round. So Maxie, what's your 42?
Yeah, so I'm not doing 1 but 2. I'm running on the first day of May. I'm running a marathon around Sydney to raise awareness for drowning prevention, and I'm also doing a marathon around Brisbane on the last weekend of May.
Yeah.
So that's my 42. What's your 42, Lee?
I am, throughout the month of May, I am going to be swimming 42 kilometres. and I haven't swam
All right.
42. Well, I did my 5-mile swim when I was like 9 years old, Greg. And that's like that was the 70s. I've not been as much of a swimmer, but I decided this was going to be my 42. So 28th of December, I hit the pool. And between 28th of December and where are we now? 20-ish of Jan. So I've done 17 Ks. So I'm like, right, that's it. I'm putting my hand up now. Well, I've told Greg I've got to be honest. So this is it. I am swimming 42 Ks in May.
Yeah. So the whole
power.
So the whole point of it, Greg, is to just watch your 42, and obviously want to over the years we want to keep doing these. Build up enough momentum around the world and around Australia for people to get involved to help donate towards our charity, to be able to get our books and our programs in the schools and people part of the rescue squad to learn life skills. However, we want to each year, hopefully, bring it down to what's your 32, what's your 22. So hopefully over time we see the average drowning, not just here in Australia, but around the world, come down. And that's something where we can get on a world scale people involved. So.
And then maybe by the time I'm 80, it'll be what's your 2. I might still be able to just do. I might be able to just do the 2Ks. You see, Greg, we've got to set a goal.
But
that's the goal.
And it's not just a physical challenge either. Obviously, not everyone can do physical challenges, and we understand that. So it could be, 42 meditations. It could be 42 push-ups. It could be 42.
Yep.
It could be 42 anything.
So we're going to try and get kids involved as well. And if kids do, what I think this is what we want to do, because a lot of this is getting the books into the schools, because they've got the lessons in them and we want them in school libraries. And we've got, I think it's really nice that say a child raises, I don't know, $50, that child then gets 5 books for their school or whatever, $50 worth of books for their school, because then that child gets the absolute reward for their effort. They've given something to their school. And I think you just said it, you're most, what you're so most proud of is your charity work. So if that child can think, I did my hard work, got this from my school library, that's good for kids' self-esteem. And there's so much stuff around
100%.
That's not good for kids' self-esteem. So, there's that's 2 of us here. And then we're I don't know what we're going to do.
Listen, I'm in.
So, Greg, can we have you as your, not putting you on the spot, feel free to say no afterwards, our unofficial UK ambassador?
Yeah.
Yay! That's it.
I'm just thinking. I'm just sitting there thinking, what's
your
I do? But listen, I am in.
Just say it one more time for me, mate. One more time that you're in.
I'm definitely.
I just want to play the music.
He just wanted the music. So now we just got a few quick questions. We've grilled you enough, Greg. We'll give you some easier questions.
These are fun ones.
Relax a little bit. So if you weren't in your chosen career, what would you do?
An astronaut.
Ooh.
Love to be an astronaut.
I can see you there with Tim Peake, actually, having a chatter in space.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Is it just looking down on the Earth, or do you have an interest in astrophysics or the space, or why astronaut?
I think multiple reasons. I think the idea of weightlessness and the impact of that, and we did some work, did some research work a few years ago now on the impact on what's called baroreceptor response, so blood pressure control with weightlessness. I think just experiencing that would be incredible. I think imagine the night sky from the International Space Station. What do you know what I mean in terms of that stargazing and that sort of stuff? I think it's not my area, but I just think
awesome.
It's
a good answer.
Yeah, we were just in the States, didn't we? Have the best couple of hours in the Griffith Observatory,
the LA Observatory.
Yeah.
They had the telescope.
What a place.
They had a telescope focused on the sun, and we could see the sunspots and all this. It was amazing.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Okay, so go back to
Mates, I've got it here. A book you love, or your favourite book that you love, a book that you love.
That you think everyone should read.
You mean apart from mine?
Obviously, well, you know what? You two. I once asked Maxie his favourite book, and he goes, "Do you want Maxie the Lifeguard 1, 2, or 3?" I was like, seriously, very predictable, boys.
Exactly.
Give us a plug. What's your book called, Greg? Give it to us if anyone wants to.
Well, Achieve the Impossible. Achieve the Impossible is the one that sort of covers all the comic relief challenges and basically the way we structure much of what we chatted about today, actually.
Awesome. Second favourite book.
It's an interesting one when it comes to books. Do you know what? The Picture of Dorian Gray, I think, is, I set myself a challenge a couple of years ago to read the classics. And I've read quite a few of them. The authors aren't alive now, but I can tell you some of them are hard going. But The Picture of Dorian Gray really is a really quite an exceptional.
Amazing.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out.
That makes me sound a lot more intelligent than I am.
I'm impressed. I haven't read it. I'm impressed. I'll be going. So we both love like a bit of a podcast. Have you got a favourite podcast that you can share? Because we love getting a podcast here.
Yours.
Well, obviously.
Your podcast.
Don't pretend that you've ever listened to one, Greg. Come on. Except this one.
I always do.
That's awesome.
On Max's
listen, I do. Yeah. No, listen, I love your podcast, guys. I think that, Propulsion Swimming do a podcast, which is a great listen as well. And I think what I love about theirs is what I love about yours, and that is sort of the eclectic nature of it, is that, I'm not listening to the same thing repeated over and over again. It's different every time. And that's, for me, that the beauty of a podcast is actually the variety.
Yeah. My husband said it's like, well, one, he said I listen to it because then I find out what's going on in life. And then he said that it's like sitting in a cafe with you. And that's what we want. Like, we know that like there's kids all over the world. And I say kids because to me, everyone's a kid. Younger people all over, and it's like we want them to feel like they're just catching up with a couple of mates.
Yeah, no,
that's
it's good fun.
Yeah.
We enjoy doing it, and we love talking to special guests like yourself. And we actually want to focus a little bit more this year of getting more guests on to give the viewers, or the listeners, I should say,
the viewers out there,
the listeners that listen in each week, to give people like yourself some really good, strong information to be able to be better in life. And mate, I could say there's a couple more questions here, but what we've spoken today is spot on, mate. So this is a bit of I'm going to say a tough one, but a bit more of a reflection. What advice would you give to your 16-year-old self?
It'll be all right.
Oh, I like that.
It'll be all right. Just don't worry about it. And I think it's interesting. It goes back to what we were saying earlier, but that focus on that focus, sort of not necessarily on failure, but that focus on the things that we can't change. I think just keep going. I had this conversation with a mate of mine the other day, and I said, what? And I have this conversation with my wife every day because she's like, "What's going on?" And I said, "Don't worry about it. We'll get there in the end." And I think honestly, the older you get, the more you realise, it'll be all right. It will be all right. Just keep going. And be the best that you can be, and it'll be all right.
And you know what? Take every opportunity. Like we went to the States.
Always.
We had no idea what we were doing, but we thought, we'll make some friends, and it was epic. So absolutely. So
I always say that, and I say that to kids, is that often people often talk about it's about opportunity. And actually, it's not about opportunity. It's about taking opportunity, and that's that's where it happens. That's where the magic happens, is by taking that. And you know what? Not every opportunity will work out, but that's all right, because if you don't take it, you'll never know.
And you create the opportunity as well. And when someone tells you no, we're big in when someone tells you no, I go. I don't know where I get this from or whatever. I go, no, it's a no from you. I'll try the next one, because I had 4 people tell me I would
Absolutely
never
right.
live in Australia. Well, unless the planet change. I've been living in Australia for a few years, and it was like, no, you don't think I've got it, what it takes to get there, but I'll find someone else. And one lady gave me the tiniest
Absolutely right.
chink of light, and it was like, that's all I needed. I was like, right, we're going to run with that. Yeah, run with that.
Exactly. Perfect.
So, what does success look like to you then, Greg?
That is very simple, and it's happiness.
Love that.
Happiness, mate. Very well put.
That is all. That is the only success. The only success that matters.
Happiness. No, I love
it.
Mate.
Brilliant.
And mate, that there's nothing really more to say to that. That's awesome. Mate, there's 2 more to go. This is the last one, then the last one Lee's going to say. But if you could be a first responder, what service would it be?
Wow. That's a really tricky one. That is a really tricky one.
Look, you can base your opinion just on the uniform if you like, Greg. Honestly.
I could do that. Do you know, it would probably be ambulance. I would have thought.
Paramedic. No.
I could see you as paramedic.
But I think first responders across the board are heroes.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no doubt about that, because on a regular basis they put themselves in danger to save others. And I think that whether it's the fire service, whoever the first responder is, but I think probably just because of my background and where I've come from, I think the ambulance crews, and sadly in the UK they're here striking currently over paying conditions, but the job they do is second to none.
And didn't the pandemic show us that the first responders were the new rock stars, really, weren't they? The front line, like I said, Maxi, you're on the front line. Everyone's isolating, everyone's staying home, but you've got to go to work, and you're facing the general public day in, day out, the people in the hospitals, the people basically keeping people safe. And that's really where, like, we were in the pandemic, as everyone was. We created the rescue squad because we thought, we're online, we don't know how long this is gonna last. This may be something that might inspire the next wave of first responders, and that's where the whole thing came from, and that's why we called it the rescue squad.
And again, what I love about what you guys do is, I think the important thing is that young or old, doesn't matter how old you are, we can all be 100%. First responders. If you, just for some stats, a cardiac arrest in the general population, so outside of hospital, has got a survival rate of about 10%.
Not much, yeah.
Same.
It'd be about the same here.
And yet,
same here in Australia.
and yet CPR, that basic life support, all the stuff that you guys talk about, the stuff that we all do for, as part of being a lifeguard, and now the RLSS here in the UK have set up what's called the National Lifeguard Academy, which is focused on young people. Giving CPR, being a first responder right there can save someone's life. Whether it's post-drowning, whether it's a dad on the beach who's had a cardiac arrest, or whether you're walking through the mall and grandma collapses. We can all be first responders. We can all save a life, and I think that's the real.
And that's why we've created the rescue squad again, for people to learn these core skills, or these life skills. They'll be able to help themselves and help others too. And you nailed it on the head.
We've got a girl in the rescue squad who's just gone to St Andrews Uni doing medicine, and she had one of her first lecture lessons, and she was the only one in the class that you quote the correct terminology, that knew the difference between, what was it? She's the only one in the class that knew the correct answer, and her tutor said to her, "That's excellent. How did you know that?" And she said, "Maxi's rescue squad."
It's awesome, mate. But you know what? As a first responder, I love what I do, and I wouldn't change it. As a lifeguard and a firefighter, and been on the front line in and out of schools and around the world as well. So
exactly.
Mate, you've been amazing. Last question.
The most important one, Greg.
Oh my gosh!
Give it to us.
Can you give us your go-to song to add to our Max's Rescue Squad playlist. So the one song that you put on that, when you've got to like make a withdrawal from the bank because it's been really tough, the one song that will change your mood.
What fires you up, basically?
What fires you up?
God, there's plenty of them. Let's go with Hootie and the Blowfish. Time. It's on Cracked Rear View, song number 8. I even know where it is.
It's all right. It's added.
Added. That is your song.
Brilliant tune. Listen to it. It's amazing.
All right.
Love it.
In fact, the whole album's amazing.
It is in there. So it's on Spotify, Max's Rescue Squad playlist. It's the most eclectic bunch of songs, but everyone's like, we got like, kids in Germany telling us, and like, you're like, oh, this is somebody new. It's just this real mixed bag of, but everyone's a good, thumping anthem of positivity. So, no, it's been, amazing. Great choice.
Great choice, mate. It's added to the squad now. But, mate, before we say our final goodbyes, mate, just from me personally, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. From watching some of the amazing challenges you've done over the last number of years. I won't say too many years because you're still young. You still look as good as ever, mate. But we do want to ask you one thing about Western Australia.
Oh, yes.
So before when I met you in Caversham Lakes in April last year, we did say that we'd love to catch up again one day. And I reckon if we can, in a perfect world, I know you haven't because you said it's something that you want to do, is the Rottnest swim. Cottesloe to Rottnest swim, the Rotto swim.
Yeah.
Don't worry, mate. There's not that many things in grey suits, but if there is ever an opportunity to do it as a charity team, I'd love to do it with you, mate. So the offer's on the table. Don't have to do. I know we're busy people and we do bits and pieces, but I think over time it'll be awesome to be able to maybe see if we can make that happen. And Live Learn Survive will be the charity we can raise some awareness for.
And we can do books for, and you know 100%. What? We can do stuff for going to the UK schools and the Aussie schools and make it like a little big hug of education around the globe.
Yeah, we'll see. But just get that in the back of your mind. I know you get a little bit of a thing in the back of your mind.
Yeah, just put that if you've ever got a spare February and you think, what can I do now? 19, Maxi, Rotto, let's go.
19.6 kilometre swim.
Let's do it.
So, and
listen, man, I'm up for it. 100%.
You can do it as a duo.
So, it'll be awesome to do it with you, mate. And I've done it. You can see the bottom the whole way. Yeah. There's not that many sharks. Yeah. There's only 6
It's a beautiful part of the world.
Didn't you say to me, Greg, I think years ago when we very first emailed, you told me, have you got a mate in Perth and you'd always wanted to do Rotto?
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. So I actually took the family out. I was on a lecture tour at UWA. And my mate is a prof there at UWA, and we actually stayed on Cotslow Beach, and we took a trip across the Rottnest Island. I mean, it's a fabulous island as well. It's one of those things I've always sort of. It's awesome. In my 50th year, I did 50 swims around the world, and it was probably the one that I wish I'd included. I just couldn't make it work. But
there's one condition, Greg. You got to bring Ben. Because I know that Ben and I will have a great time on the boat while you two are swimming. Absolutely, you got to bring Ben because he's your wingman, and that's like, so yeah, it's so plant that seed. We've got to have a goal, Greg. We just plant that one on the to-do list.
Pleasure, mate.
Good, and our 42 as well. 42. And the 42.
Just let us know what you think. Put your thinking caps on, mate, and it'll be awesome to have you involved as our UK ambassador.
Yes.
100%, mate.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. Listen, thank you for having me on. It is an absolute pleasure, and I am properly a fan of everything you guys do. I think you're amazing. Keep
thanks,
it up,
mate.
Thank you so much. We will end this, and then we'll say our goodbyes.
Yeah, mate. Again, so great to see you, and thank you for your time. We love you.
You've been so generous with your
Love you
time,
too,
Greg.
mate.
Thanks so much.
Absolute pleasure.